Now I want to talk to you about the mother of all gaps. We talked about the mother of all sins, the battle of the ages, going back to the very essence of the accusation that's in the name of Satan himself. So, Ezekiel chapter 32 and verse 30 is the central message about intercession. 32:30. Is it 22:30? Ezekiel 22, verse 30. Okay, beloved intercessors, people who have thought of themselves as intercessors, you're going to have some processing to do here, in particular. So I sought for a man among them who would make a wall and stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land, that I should not destroy it. But I found no one. Therefore I have poured out my indignation on them. So I sought for a man among them who would make up a wall and stand in the gap. The Hebrew word for gap, peretz. Peretz. The Hebrew word for gap means to break out. Not only does it describe the essence of what the thing is, but it describes how it happened. You follow that? The Hebrew word for gap tells us how the gap happened. What is the gap? It's the space in the fence. The word here for wall is gader, that means fence. God put a fence around us. He gave us His law, His nature, and said, stay within these parameters and we're good. Outside, you're going to encounter something else. He says, I live within these parameters. This is my nature. If you step outside my nature, you make a hole in the fence. Man said, we don't want you to be God over us. What does that boil down to? It means we don't want your laws. It's not just your name, but we don't want to have to do what you say. We don't want to line up our lives with your principles and your ways anymore. So we're stepping out of the protective fence that God's placed around us by this token of having given us His commandments, His Torah, His aspects of His nature. So we made a hole. Beloved, picture it real simple. You make a hole in the fence, the cows go out. And what happens outside? They get poached and butchered. So I looked for someone. Now, the context here is about the land. It's not about dealing with individual people's issues and sins. The context is for the destruction, the preservation of the land. He looked for somebody to stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land, which is the people as well. It's not just a physical, but it's Israel, the land and the people. The land didn't sin, the people did. He says, so I'm looking for somebody who will close up the gap in the fence that was made by rejecting what I've given you, and you close the gap by becoming the fence. The Hebrew phrase is legader gader, which means to close the fence by becoming the fence. He's asking you to become part of the fence. Now, just think this through. That gap is specific. The gap is the people did something specifically that made the whole. It's just, all sin is specific. The actions are specific. The Lord said this, you did that. It's specific. So, you can't generally close the fence. Now, thinking about this in the spirit realm, to close the fences is to do the opposite thing. Is to restore what was put there. It's to affirm that which was before. To affirm it is basically you're doing the opposite thing that broke it down. Do you follow that? Is that clear? Closing the gap requires the opposite action to what opened it up. So what's the gap? What's the mother of all gaps? You got a lot of little gaps, but it all began by rejecting God. By rejecting His voice, by rejecting His presence. We don't want you any longer with us. This is the mother of all gaps. What is intercession about? It's an interesting word in Hebrew. To intercede, lahafkia. The root of the word, which designates an essential aspect or meaning of it, is the word for hit. Hebrew, it's paga. Hit. The word for hit. That would be a physical hit or an emotional hit. This is the essence of the word for intercession. What does that mean? Why? Why is the word for standing in the gap, for closing the hole, built off of the word to hit? Yeshua on the cross. He says, as they've crucified him. Now, I tend to think he's speaking perhaps here about the people that did the action and not of all mankind, but it's an open question. He said, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. He interceded for them. And you imagine the Father saying, if you, who they did it to, is willing to forgive them, how can I not? He had authority to forgive because he was the one who had been hit. So when you look at the things in your life, and you look at the people who have done things to you, and what they've done to you is out of their own brokenness, believing the best, that the person isn't evil to the core, but they're broken like all of us. And I mean, we look at our parents that way, at the lacking that they had, but I look at the way my father grew up and I go, he couldn't do anything different than what he did because of what was poured out into him. So when we have been set upon, wrongfully treated, We can either curse the person who did it, accuse them, expose them, or can look and say, they're doing this out of their brokenness, or even as I spoke about Joseph, see that God is even behind it and say, I don't hold you responsible. And the moment that we release somebody from the results or the consequences of their action, Father will respond in a positive way to them. In the same way as Father responds to Yeshua at the cross. So what is the, beloved, the mother of all gaps? Listen, you can go running around, we can go running around and looking at every little thing that's wrong. And he said, I pray over this, and I pray over that, and I pray over this. We can keep sticking our finger in the dike. Every little hole that's broken forth to try to stop it. Or we can go, there's a root cause here that's behind all of what's going wrong. And it's the absence of the presence of God. In particular, at the place of determination, which is Israel. The mother of all gaps is Israel's rejection of God. Now you are part of the Israel of God. And Israel is a unique entity because it's both physical and spiritual. Consequently, because it is identified by God in Scripture with an identity both spiritual and physical, it connects the spiritual and the physical. Just like your body, soul, and spirit. If something happens in your body, it affects your spirit. If something happens in your spirit, it affects your body. If we affect something in the spirit realm, in Israel, it will affect something on the ground. If we do something on the ground in Israel, it'll affect something in the spirit. You want to go to the root? This is it. And the answer to rejecting God is saying, we want you. And going to worship in spirit and truth. The spiritual aspect is saying we want you, and the truth aspect is doing something about it. Go take your half an hour now. Now go. We stop here? Go.